Get O'Sullivan on the phone. We need to know where these buses are going. Like,
Yeah, we're due to have a little girl. Me and my partner, not me and Julia, to be clear. Over 100,000 children in the UK have a parent in prison.
Everybody's paying the price for the crime. Often they become very poor as a consequence of that.
gosh.
I mean, long nails, totally banned. My ick that gives me an itch is the term practitioner. Don't be stupid, June. Be ridiculous.
Hello.
We're back.
We are so
And it's
back.
going to be a big one this week. I'm so excited.
Why?
June O'Sullivan. Big deal.
Not June O'Sullivan
Yeah.
from the London Early Years
I
Foundation.
like how you're pretending like you don't know who we're about to interview.
I was Matt. Don't
Sorry.
do that.
Showing behind the scenes. We're talking to June
Unbelievable.
about so many things.
We are.
We're going to talk about prisons. That's going to be really exciting. Her recent work on prisons. Also, lots about 2-year-olds, which
Absolutely.
underrated age.
They are. No more terrible twos.
You were telling me beforehand.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think you and June are very aligned on that.
I think so. I love 2-year-olds.
Yeah.
It's the most exciting age, so I cannot wait to hear what she has to say about it. And I'm so excited to share in a bit of the joy of the Twoness of Twos.
It's going to be good. And I'm a bit nervous this week because,
Go on.
again, showing a little bit more behind the scenes. Julia normally does all the prep. She does the research. She writes the notes. She does the questions. I just rock up, lazily, just nothing to do. She even sticks the things on the cards.
Dude, honestly, wow, you're really letting people behind the
Letting people behind the
scenes.
scenes. But this week, I did the research.
He did.
So it's going to be exciting. No more messing me up by writing lies in the descriptions.
This is true. People usually have something to correct, don't they? So hopefully, hopefully there'll be 1 or 2 things wrong there. So June has to correct you. Otherwise, I'm just going to look dreadful.
Look pretty bad. Yeah, true. Should we get underway?
I think we should.
Let's do it.
Matt, would you introduce our guest, please?
I would absolutely love to. So, Dr. June O'Sullivan, we'll get into that shortly, is the CEO of London Early Years Foundation, which has provided care and education for children for over 120 years, which is pretty exciting.
Was she was CEO the whole time?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, wow.
Ageless. June has been in charge since 2004, I believe, if my sources are correct. And they now have 42 nurseries and nearly 800 staff. Maybe she can fact check me on that one. June is pretty well known as a bit of an innovator in the early years space, I'd say. I can attest to the fact she usually has about 17 new ideas on the go at any one moment. From intergenerational care, working with prisons, sustainability, bringing more men into the sector, engaging dads, 2-year-olds, ratios, Ofsted, the role of chefs, and many, many more. June has an OBE for services to education. Recently got her doctorate in developing sustainability-informed staff and has co-authored many, many guides and books, including the Twoness of Twos, which we'll be going into today. The first time I saw June in person was at a roundtable event organised by the wonderful Joe Verrill at Cedar, when after a number of tense questions, June, who was on the panel, took the mic and said, "Can I just say the problem here is none of us are admitting that we're not that similar and some of us don't even like each other very much," which garnered, I think, the first standing ovation of the day. So I'm hoping she brings that
Lovely.
firiness to the chat today. June,
Yes.
welcome to the Tiny Chair podcast.
Welcome, June.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Did I get anything wrong? Any fact checking?
No, I think, did you say 42 or 43 nurseries?
I said 42. Is my information out of date?
Yeah, 43 now, yeah.
Okay, nice. Congratulations. Very good. You don't make it half hard to prepare for a podcast, June. I've got so many things I want to talk to you about, and we only have such a short time to do it. So we'll get straight underway. June,
Yes.
do you want to kick us off?
So for a warm-up, June, do you know what an ick is?
A which?
No, an ick. So something that you don't like to see in the early years. A bit of practice, or it's not necessarily harmful, but you just don't like it.
Oh, well, my ick that gives me an itch is the term practitioner.
Ooh, go on,
nice.
go on.
I mean, I go on about that permanently because we are not practitioners, really. What we are teachers, early years teachers, and I can't understand how we can't use that language. So we do at least.
Nice.
Nobody is called anything other than a teacher or obviously a manager, because teaching is what we do. Your role is a different kettle of fish. So if your role is a manager, you're still an early years teacher underneath it all. And I don't like that snobbery about, oh yeah, well you could be a practitioner because you're in PVI, and you can be a teacher because you're in the school, even though
Oh, no.
to some degree a lot of our training and our experience is more than a teacher will have in a school in relation to the early years. So for us, we are early years teachers, and I wish we
Love
would
that.
accept and own and embrace that language more confidently. I know there's a tentative touch with the term educators now as a route to it, because I think a lot of places were scared about what the unions would say and academics would say, link it to qualifications. But You know, I remember I was on the Nut Brown review, and I remember Kathy Nut Brown saying, why do people judge people on the basis of what qualification they've got? In no other sector would they do that. And I agree with her totally.
I couldn't agree with you more. None of us are qualified to do any of this, are we? You're
Qualified
a bit qualified.
podcaster, do you mean? Or?
Yeah, podcast. I didn't get a podcaster qualification.
No, not yet. But I mean, you never know.
Could be on the way. Right, then let's get started with... I think that's the most popular ick. That's the second time we've had that as an ick. Matt Martin said the same thing.
Interesting.
And I agree with you. Practitioner, it needs to go, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What are you practicing for?
Exactly, it's gone. It went at least. It went on 2017. I can't tell you the morale boost it gave the staff when I announced from our conference podium that we would never be using the term again. And I thought I'd get more pushback, but I got none for anyone.
I think that's probably a bit of a theme of the podcast in general. I reckon probably quite often people are afraid of doing things, and then you do it, and there's maybe less pushback than you thought. But let's see once we get into it. All right, starting off easy, June, for our quickfire round. Get to know you a little bit. Would you describe yourself as an early bird or a night owl?
Oh, a total night owl. Absolute.
What is the funniest thing that a child has ever said to you?
You know, I'm always saying to the staff, because I'm, creasing up sometimes when I'm talking to the children, and I keep saying, I must write this down. I must write this down. We must make a book of these. And they happen so often and so frequent that you forget them, and then you can't think of anything that they say.
That's why you need to write them down in the book.
Yes, so I can't really answer that quite now, but now you are forcing me to actually do what I keep saying to do, is to write them down. Because children have such philosophical views on things, they make me die.
I want to buy the Leaf book on children early years philosophy, I love that.
I'm totally into it.
Yeah.
All right, and then June, what is something random that you would say you're sort of outrageously knowledgeable on?
Oh, the buses of London.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a standing joke that I can probably tell you the route to anywhere by knowing the buses, and I get great excitement when I learn new bus routes. I'm slightly mad, but I am renowned for it.
Tell me more. How did you develop
yeah.
this interest?
It's just because I'm always travelling to nurseries and I'm always travelling to meetings and everything else, and I always use public transport. So I've learned the quickest way everywhere, and which bus you jump off to get on which bus. And I think the London buses are they're a wonderful thing. And during COVID, when they were the bus drivers were the ones, I used to keep thanking them and saying, I always nice to the bus drivers anyway, but they were like, they kept going and they kept the city going. You know, when people are complaining about the cold or the snow or the sleet, the buses, they are, the trains, they drop at the drop of a hat, they cancel. The buses,
true,
they go on and they don't get paid as much as train drivers, and they're left on their own. Often in the olden days, they had a conductor to support them, and they're on their own as bus drivers. And I think
is that true that they don't get paid as much as the train drivers?
I don't think anyone gets paid as much as the train drivers, to be honest.
That's true. That's true. I don't want to be rude, and I don't know much about.
I think if we put all the children in a train and had nurseries on trains, the staff would all be much better paid because they'd be working for TfL, not for everybody else.
And I don't want to make assumptions, but it just seems easier, doesn't it? You're going straight.
I mean, I can't drive anything, so I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not judging. But I love the idea that TfL, the tube goes down and they're like, get O'Sullivan on the phone. We need to know where these buses are going. Like, that's magic knowledge. I love that. One
of the little stories was that we have a nursery in the Houses of Parliament, and so the children come in to Westminster.
That's so cool.
And Green Park is the other station that is used by the parents, and the what are they called? The people on the platform, the tube
signalers,
platform assistants, crumbs. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Anyway, then they got to know this
if you're
child,
one of those,
and every morning they'd call out his name as he came right across the top of everybody, say "Good morning, Leo."
Oh, that's lovely.
And he would go "Good morning" and cheer everybody up on the platform. And so I always thought that is those kind of lovely London stories. I always think are very joyful, and children bring out the best in a lot of people, and so it's a kind of, you could sort of sense the smile that rushed down the platform, It's a bit like that Crocodile Dundee, film where he's trying to catch a one and he's going across the top of everybody on the very busy station. And then he finally gets to the girl, obviously, because he's a crocodile and a Dundee. There we are.
I think it's such a good point. Children do bring out the best in everyone.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. And I think we should remember that sometimes when we are stressed about it all.
Mm.
Yeah. Julia.
Oh, sorry, is it me?
I think
So
it is
sorry, I
you.
was
It is
enjoying
you.
the
We're getting a
story.
bit more. We're getting a bit more serious now.
What's something that you truly believed in the past, perhaps were very vocal about, but actually now you've changed your mind on?
Like the men in childcare thing, I haven't changed my mind on. Still think that's a really good thing.
Maybe you always have been very steadfast. You got it right the first time.
I've been fairly steadfast on the things that I know, but I think I'm always interested in new research. In fact, we're having this conversation this morning, myself and Connor, about being an academic and how you kind of, the more you study, the more you understand things, the more you lift the lid on things, that you actually learn more about or change your mind on, or new stuff comes along that makes you realize. Some of the kind of more complex issues, like, say, phonics. I was always a great fan of letters and sounds. I feel that, the coding is helpful to teach the children how to sort of sound things out as one tool in the reading toolbox, But I would have probably been completely anti-phonics at the beginning, because I could see the stress on children's faces. But I guess you have to accept that for some children it might be a useful tool for them. Once, like, the whole class doesn't have to sit for 40 minutes to learn sounds, and then some children are completely put off by it because it's not appropriate. And I guess that whole class teaching is quite complex in that, you have certain things to achieve. And, you have to sort of, it's a bit like a sort of conveyor belt. You have to sort of, in a way, the children have to all learn these kind of things, even though for some it's not that relevant, because in the end a classroom is a group rather than a set of individuals, although I know people try and talk about the individual needs, but that's very hard if you're one teacher and you've got 30 children. So I understand the complexities of that more, I'd say.
It's interesting, isn't it, though? The more you learn about something, the more you realise that you didn't know, or perhaps the more you realise you still don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I think
That's entirely a June saying across the whole of Leaf. The more you know, the less you know. Say that all the time.
I love that. What are the
Very
other
true.
June sayings that are sort of in the canon?
I mean, long nails, totally banned for, verboten completely. No blue tack on the walls because everything costs, and so therefore, every time I paint the wall, I say to them, there's no money tree out there, guys. We got to raise the money and to do everything nice. So look after us if it was your own home. That's one of mine. Cleanliness is next to godliness, another one. I hate anything dirty. I don't like it. I go into some nurseries and they're grubby, and I feel like, why should children be in a dirty space? Dollies night, I like the dollies to be dressed. I know the children are you have schematic thinking, I know that, and they, it's important that they take the clothes off and put the clothes on again, and they do all that sort of thing. But I always like the dolls to be dressed. They all think that's very amusing. So they can take the clothes off, they just have to put them back on.
Put them back on.
I used to, when I had more time, I used to knit dollies' clothes for the nurseries when I had a chance to have a quite keen knitter. But I haven't had a chance.
Lovely.
I'm writing too much at the moment.
I'm excited for this book, though. We've got the philosophy of early years from the children, and then we've got June's sayings. I like this.
Plus maybe a knitting guide.
Oh, and a knitting guide. Lovely.
And June's tour of London buses.
Oh, yeah. June's bus routes. Lovely.
Lots more books to write, June.
Yeah, you weren't busy, were you, June?
As I say, I've always been a keen knitter. I find it very relaxing. Knitting and baking are the two things that do it for me. But I haven't had a chance because trying to do a PhD in the evening and work full time, and I also like to sing in a choir. And you just kind of have to, something has to go. So I'm afraid the knitting went.
But now the PhD's done, you can go back to knitting.
No, I'm writing the book on the social justice pedagogy. I've got to get that over the line.
It's never over. It's never over.
I love, this is a fascinating juxtaposition, isn't it? Lovely traditional hobbies like baking and knitting, and then writing social justice pedagogy is lovely.
Oh yeah, some of my friends only come because they're going to get cake.
I love that. All right, a couple more quick fire ones before we get on to 2-year-olds. June, you're someone who I think, if I'm right in thinking, gets a lot of your ideas from sort of outside of the sector as well.
Yeah.
And I know that someone called John Carnochan was quite influential in your thinking. What was the most interesting thing you learned from him?
Oh, John Carnochan.
Carnochan. I knew I was going to get the emphasis wrong on that.
Well, I think it was the story of David, and I got him to come to our annual conference, and honestly, there wasn't a dry eye in the house because he talked about he set up the anti-violence unit in Glasgow, and his thinking was, instead of having more police on the streets, we need more health visitors and more nursery teachers, because actually what we do in the early years is much more significant in terms of supporting the children. But my argument also for him, and which confirmed for me what I was doing, was that it couldn't just be in ordinary nurseries. You have to be a social enterprise in the way of thinking about things. So, for example, central to social enterprise is community engagement. No, not just visiting here and there and going out every now and then, but actually being fundamentally understanding the community that you're involved in. And I think it was last year, 18 months ago, you guys, family, helped to fund the prison pack that we did, because and all of that came through the sort of the original thinking from meeting John and understanding the impact that has on young people, in particularly boys ending up in prison, where the early years is a particular trajectory. But the outcome was that we did the prison pack, which I hope you put a link on in this podcast, because it was a nice piece of work, and we were very grateful for your contribution to it, which is shared obviously widely with the sector. But it's really what John was saying was that really so many young people have a really hard start in life, and that actually if you give them a good nursery experience, but it has to be grounded in community engagement as well. It can't just be turn up at nursery and then go away. You have to understand where the child comes from, the community they're in, and how you support the family and the parents, which is like all key to the social justice pedagogy, which I've written about and designed and evaluated and changed and nuanced from 2009 when I first started to work on it. And so that is like critical in terms of that. And my interest in prisons continues. In fact, just recently did prison radio, and it's just so sad that so many young, mostly men, so young boys, are sort of failed by society. And interestingly, there was a big piece on the Telegraph yesterday with Bridget Phillipson about working class children, particularly boys, being failed really by the system, because we don't engage fast enough, we don't pick it up quick enough, we don't spend enough time on it. And we tend to have a policy that tends to make things worse. So what happens is you notice, say, I don't know, you notice, Black Caribbean boys are failing in terms of schooling. So there's an effort to do something to support them. So you put a lot of effort into that and take your eye off the ball for the other children. So they then, they get some support and some progress is made, by which point other children have then, gone down the pan because the effort has been placed on them. And so the kind of point John Carrigan was making was, don't do it like that. In a way, create a system where they're all getting the kind of support that helps to lift them all, and therefore less likely to end up in a life of crime. Because everything is driven by poverty in my book, So poverty is the failing. It's the systemic failing that causes all these problems in the long term, and so therefore. Anything we can do from the early years counts, but we have to do it with we have to understand the early years as a political space, and that everything we do has to be done through the social justice lens. That's my thinking. It's not everybody's thinking, but that's the way I go about it. And that's the way Leaf is run as well.
We were going to ask you about the prisons work later, but seeing as how you mentioned it, I think it's worth diving into a little bit now. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, I remember when you first reached out and we started talking about it, I remember this stat that was like over 100,000 children in the UK have a parent in prison, which just was...
That's right.
It's so silly, but you just almost don't think about it. You don't think about the fact that there are children often behind these people who've been imprisoned. And I wondered if you could just tell a little bit about the story that led to you thinking and maybe your realization about how important prisons could be in the work that you do with Leaf.
Well, like anything, it's kind of serendipitous, and one of the managers was chatting to me, and she said that one of the grandparents was really struggling to rear her grandson, and it turns out that the parent was in prison and drugs related, but the grandma was very embarrassed by all of this and hadn't said anything to anyone, but the manager has a very warm relationship with her and recognized something was awry. And when I started to talk to the other managers about this, they could all tell me stories about this and how they've all done their own bit to help. So, for example, in that case, the grandparent didn't want any emphasis on the fact that her own child, in this case, the child's mother actually, was in prison. But we knew that, prison doesn't just impact on the person in the prison. It also impacts on the entire family. And often they become very poor as a consequence of that. You don't get any additional support. And, everybody's paying the price for the crime. And so we, like, for when the child was going to school, we bought them the full school uniform and everything, but we rewrapped it as, it was their leaving present. You have to be kind of understanding of people's pride and their pride and their embarrassment at the situation. And also, sometimes it has nothing to do with, people often say, oh yeah, there must have been a terrible home. But often it's none of those things. They've just gone in with a bad crowd, or they have a dependency on alcohol or drugs, which is then causes them to behave in a criminal way, etc. And so it really made me realize that there was probably many other families out there like that who are trying to be silent about the situation. And so I went to talk to PACT, which is the Parent and Child Trust, which works with families in prison. And I talked to them, and they, the stories they told me were like resonant with what we were experiencing. And I felt that we could really help by producing a pack to support staff to understand the kind of nuance behind the sort of the front, that of we'll be okay, we're doing this ourselves. And so, for example, PACT arranged for us to go to visit one of the prisons in Thamesmead, and to go through the processes if we were going in with our children, and it is quite scary. And so we experienced that was really, it was really useful to put in the handbook, because if you're a child, if the child is going to visit their parent in some prison, often miles away, this is what they're going to go through. How do you kind of prepare them for that?
And then have conversations with them afterwards, yeah.
Exactly right. When they come back. But also what was really interesting to me, so how I do things at LEAF is generally I have the task and finish group, which basically I set the question and say, I'd like a group of you to work with this with me, and so we kind of connect, and anyone, I don't care who it is, is interested in the subject. So it's all about, it's like very social pedagogical here. Your interest is what drives it, not necessarily your role. So I got the most interesting group of people together, because one's mum had been a prison officer for 30 years, one's mum had been in prison, one's boyfriend had been in prison, one had a different experience and was, had sort of in a way escaped a prison route by luck and judgment. One was just interested in the whole idea. One was interested in young men's literacy, So the combination meant that we ended up with the task and finish group. And the task was to identify what we can do to help and what phasing can we do. And then and then you finish it, and then maybe do another task and finish group. Because I think when you have a working group, sometimes the working group goes on for so long that actually becomes business as usual, and it becomes a bit demotivating. Whereas I think when you're part of something that you kind of have a focus, it's better.
I like that idea of just like devolving responsibility to get it done is a really interesting way.
And allowing people's interest to kind of come to the fore. And, a couple of them came to the prison with me, and because they're very interested in that, went through the whole experience. They helped me with the pack. And like I sent it out to them for ideas and, all of that sort of stuff, it's really useful, because you don't always know the backstory of your staff. And sometimes just a question like that kind of drives a different set of responses, and you see another layer of people's complex kind of background stories, and give them a chance to sometimes address those issues in a way that they feel is going to be helpful in the long term. And I think that's what we try to do with the prisons. And also, everybody needs a chance. So what I am keen to do is, and it's taking much longer than I wanted to take, but, prisons are actually, funnily enough, hard to get into. I want to take some young people who have, young men particularly, who have low-grade offences, and when they come out, they're likely to go back in. I mean, the statistics for return and recidivism is really, really high, because they come out with, I think, 70 quid and nowhere to live and no family and no job. And so, it doesn't take them long to get back into the ways that that cost them in the first instance. But I'd love to train them up to be chef apprentices, part of our, chef academy, and to actually teach them to become chefs, and in the early years, or in schools, or in a way become expert on nutrition for small children. But in doing that, I'd also like to teach them how to become good dads, because I think a lot of them haven't had good role models as dads. So they don't understand their role. And I was talking to them about that on the radio the other day, actually, about how you're still a dad, whether you're behind bars or not. So your influence is still important. And what's the statistics? 60% of young children whose fathers are in prison are more likely to end up in prison than they are to go to university. That's pretty stark, isn't it?
Get Alice Sharp involved.
Yeah.
I'll work with dads. Yeah.
You've done a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't think Alice and June are very far away from each other ever, to be fair.
So, yeah.
Alice is a great influence on me. I very much love that girl. And I've known her for 30 years now, probably. And she doesn't, she's always one that says, don't be stupid, June. Be ridiculous. And you need those people around you, because you say, really, okay, all right.
Oh gosh, look at him, he's so little.
What, Mickle?
No, he's enormous. Look, I'm looking at my son's 2-year progress check
cool.
on family. I just thought as we were talking about 2-year-olds, I would go back and have a look. And look, you can see how they've covered all the areas of learning, and there's some photos and all the detailed support they were giving him. Look, and because they sent it in family, you can see my comments as well. I could add stuff too. So
pretty nice. And this is all just there on your phone?
Yes, so I can refer back to it now, even though he's actually left nursery. So I can just log in on my phone and have a look.
That's pretty nice. And if someone from home wants to check out where they can get this, where do they go?
They can go to family.co and ask for a demo.
Nice. Should we get back to the podcast with June?
Let's
jump on to 2-year-olds then. So such an interesting piece of work. So for those who don't know, a number of years ago, when was the first edition out, June?
2012.
2012. So 2012, Leave, together with Louise Hanan, did this work on 2-year-olds and recently did an updated version. And from what I can understand, it was sort of, with this increase of funded places in England, it was just thinking of like, there's an increased focus on 2s, we need to revisit the topic. But I guess my first question on this is sort of, why do you think it is that we need to rebrand the terrible 2s for once and all, and how do we do it?
I think 2-year-olds get a very bad press, and actually it's a really interesting developmental stage, but it is can be quite tough for both the parent, the child, and the teacher, really, as a triangle. So in 2012, my friend Sue Chambers, who then sadly died in 2019,
I'm sorry.
She and I wrote this together, and I wish she was alive. I wish she was alive now. I always wish she's alive, but she's not. And I laughed. I'd be telling her now about how terrible our research skills were back in 2012 when we wrote the first draft. But we wrote it because there was nothing about 2-year-olds at all, and we were concerned that was the first expansion of 2-year-olds. And it was like, my gosh, these little children are going into nurseries and there isn't really a bank of knowledge about them that is being kind of in a way circulated and highlighted. And these, people will do their best, but, we need to know more to do our absolute best. And so the same occurred in last year, when the next expansion of the 2-year-old suddenly was announced by Jeremy Hunt, the expansion of childcare was announced by Jeremy Hunt, and then the new government, the Labour Party government, decided that they would continue with it. And it struck me that 2-year-olds and under 2s are often misunderstood, and if suddenly we're getting these large numbers with a lot of very recently qualified or indeed unqualified staff, and now that the law has changed so you could put apprentices into the ratios and stuff, that these children are going to be at the mercy of ill-informed young teachers. And what can we do to help? So I asked a friend of mine who's also just done her PhD, Louise Hanan, who was doing her PhD on the emotional environment for 2-year-olds. So it was a perfect combo. And so I asked her if she would like to co-write this with me, and we would upgrade it, and then we would implement some of her thinking. And she's about to write a book on this now anyway. And so it was really about how do you help staff to understand? How do you do that? And how do you write a short handbook so it's accessible? People have busy lives. They learn differently now. They learn in snippets and stuff. How do you support it with, say, a podcast on 2-year-olds? How do you help people to realize that the 2-year-old developmental stage is really, really powerful? And the brain, the neuro, science development knowledge that we have now, it really influences how we think about the 2-year-olds' kind of, sizzing brains and synaptic connections that are, at a trillion rate a minute. And so I wanted to do that to help people, but mostly to help 2-year-olds not to have a really tough time where people don't understand how to respond to them, and just put them in that kind of, I think, that kind of terrible two-year-old tantrums, which is really not, I mean, it's true that some of the children can be, there can be quite a lot of tantrums, but it's in response to their brains and their bodies not, in a way being slightly disconnected. So their brains are telling them that they want to be able to say things and be able to do things, and their bodies haven't quite got there yet. And so that frustration kind of comes as a result in them, just getting so frustrated that they just can't handle it. And our job is to help them to kind of manage that and to regulate that and to co-regulate alongside them and to make them feel secure and to make them feel that their emotions, which is so powerful and so volcanic, are actually controlled in a way that's loving and caring and helps them to move through this phase, which is easier to do on a one-to-one at home, maybe, or maybe a childminder with a smaller group, but can sometimes feel overwhelming if you're in a nursery space where there's, rooms of 2-year-olds, all going through a similar phase, but manifesting in slightly different ways, again, in terms of the children's age, stage, abilities, and personalities, and as Lillian Katz would say, and dispositions for learning. So I think that was really what we were wanting to do.
I mean, in that vein then, for the teachers who might be listening to this today and are going into a room full of 2-year-olds, what's some of the magic that they should be looking out for?
I think with 2-year-olds is you have to understand that change is a really challenging thing for them, and transitions during the day. So I think you have to really understand transitions and really help to plan them. Now, some places do visual timetables. They do, sort of preparation time. They announce things are going to change, that sort of thing. Routine is very important to them. And sometimes people are a bit scathing about routines, but routines are actually done as part of the learning experiences, as part of the day, are really critical, and they're really good learning opportunities for children. But they're not meant to be military campaigns either, where the routine is about, the staff and the kind of hour of the day. But so I think that's very important to understand. How does the routine work? So it creates a safety space for the children, but also and a pathway throughout the day, but it's done in a way that actually kind of helps them not to get stressed at those transition points. That's the first thing. The second thing is listening is really important for toddlers, because they're learning to speak and the words take longer to come out. And Anna Sharp used to always say to me, the 5 fingers. She'd say pause, 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 speak. And that actually is very hard to do, because we are inclined to just jump straight in and try and answer the question for the child and stuff. Whereas actually just to give them a little bit of time to breathe and try and say what it is they are saying, or for you, the teacher, to be able to interpret that. So I often pop into nurseries, and the children are very welcoming. And I think children are a bit like, they're like horse whisperers. They're kind of adult whisperers. They know and they sense an adult who likes them, and they sense an adult who's nervous of them, and they sense an adult who'd rather be somewhere else than in anywhere to do with small children. And I like children, and they always know that. And so you end up having these chats with these. And often I tell them a story with my mouth, is their term, for you just telling them a story without a book.
Mm.
But sometimes 2-year-olds haven't, their pronunciation isn't quite there. And you know, and you can see the frustration when they're trying to tell you what they're trying to tell you. And I'm trying to figure a way out of not frustrating them by sort of thinking, gosh, I really not sure what you're saying here. So what you always have to have is an adult who's an interpreter. And I think great teachers are interpreters of 2-year-olds. They interpret their mood. They interpret the way the day is going. They interpret what they're saying for you. And, great teachers are always 2 steps ahead of what's happening. So you always know that you've got insecure or new or inexperienced teachers in a room when they're doing things at the same time as the children. Your experienced person sees ahead and they're already there before the children get to it. And therefore the room is calmer, the day is calmer, and the children are calmer because they feel held in the arms of an adult that they trust, and an adult that trusts them and likes them and loves them. And so they feel in that kind of lovely warmth. So the enabling environment is hugely important, I think, in terms of not just provocations and interesting things to do, but that emotional kind of capture that they feel secure in, that is, really has to be delivered by the adults and then kind of like knitted like a net underneath them. So it's invisible, but it's there. And then within that, you can do all sorts of interesting and crazy and fun activities that will explore the children's learning in terms of their, their wider cognitive learning and their social and language expansion,
I think it's a really great balance of first of all, thinking about routine as not as a strict thing, but almost as in giving some predictability to the children. Then thinking about safety in a safe environment, adding on top, becoming a fantastic interpreter, which I think is so important. And then those wonderful provocations to help them develop their learning. What part do you think sort of language and language acquisition has within that struggle that you talk about around a child kind of struggling to get their thoughts out, and what practitioners should be thinking about to make sure that they support them in having that vocabulary and develop that vocabulary to then be able to get those big thoughts out?
I think this is why I kind of we wrote the book, really, and it's not really a book, but the handbook, and there's probably more to do, and there are some very nice books on 2-year-olds out there. It's kind of understanding what I call the Mary Sheridan moments. It seems to me that nowadays lots of training doesn't seem to involve the kind of logical order of development and milestones. And people say, oh yeah, because children develop at their own rate. They do, but they also develop within milestones. So you do have to understand what is happening in the child's brain and what's happening in the child's physicality to be able to respond in a way that's educated and informed and in a way confident. And I think a confident staff member gives confidence to a child. They kind of feel reassured that somebody around there is in charge and knows what they're doing and can interpret some of that language. So, a nursery that is, or indeed a childminder who is working with 2-year-olds needs to be willing to do things like sing. We know that, for example, children at 2 are much more responsive to the singing cadence of your voice than the telling cadence of your voice. So if you're saying, it's tidy up time, it's much more likely to get a response from them than, come on now, children, we must tidy up. And how hard is it to sing, And so lots of singing and lots of storytelling. I mean, there's nothing more joyful when you go into them and you say, and one day I knocked at the door of your nursery, and there indeed was Tallulah and Sam. And you can see their eyes like, how do you know? How do you know we were here? Yeah. And you tell them the story, and then you can get them and you start talking to them about whatever it is you're wanting to try and teach them. And you tell it to them in that way. And you see that kind of warmth in staff relations with children who are able to do that sort of thing. And the children are almost like the Pied Piper are sort of following them around. And I think it's kind of shocking what's going on. This idea that you don't engage, cuddle, kiss, lift, pick up, and, hug really hard little small children because they absolutely need it. And I hear this terrible, I think almost abusive narrative about, we'll give them the cream to put on their arms themselves, or, when they've fallen over and hurt themselves, we will be by their side, but we won't pick them up. I mean, how cruel is that to a child who needs to be picked up and patted, or picked up and given a big hug, or picked up and given, a kiss on the cheek to make they feel loved. I mean, Jules Page's work, and she and I have talked about this, about giving permission to talk about the word love, is really important, because the children love you. They absolutely love you, and you love them, and there's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes people are like, well, we don't want parents to feel like that, we have a stronger relationship with them. Most parents are going to be pleased that you love their child like they love their child. But of course, it's not going to be the same quality of love. Never can replicate a parent's love for a child, in that situation. But you have your own love for that child, and parents come in and they say, "Oh, he's just talked endlessly about this staff member," or I'm so glad he's back, because honestly, I've had a whole 2 weeks of where is he, when is he coming back, when are we going outside, when are we going to see him, or that sort of thing. And I think that's so important for a parent to feel like that the place that they've decided to put their child during the hours that they're working or training or whatever is somewhere where that child has found their own place. So for me, the nursery must be like an expansion of their home. And like the way we set up a Leaf nursery is always got a home feel to it. So sometimes I go into new nurseries and they're terribly proud of their provocations and the way it's laid out. But it's so, so cold. It's got all the right wooden pieces, and it's got a flow and all of that stuff, but it doesn't feel like home in any way at all. And I think we have kind of got to get that balance right, because nurseries aren't showcases that look amazing, with all the things all laid out, and the lights here and this there and that there. Actually, what children want is a sofa.
Yeah.
They want a staff member who's going to sit on that sofa with them and give them a cuddle, and they're feeling tense or worried, or they're missing their parent, or they're tired. Some children are with us 10 hours a day. 10 hours a day, and you're 2 years old, and you're told to be nice to your friends. And when you're actually an emotional bubble of idiosyncrasy, really, and you're trying to figure that out for yourself, and you have been told that you've got to be nice to your friends, and your friends have driven you crazy for 8 of the 10 hours, and somehow or other we're expecting 2-year-olds to have that kind of emotional capability.
I don't think I'd be nice to my friends after 10 hours.
No.
When we as adults, can't tolerate somebody for 20 minutes.
We were talking about this last week with Naz, whose episode is going out before yours, is this idea of we have expectations sometimes for children that we would never have of ourselves.
Yeah, that's true.
So I have to very selfishly finish off with one
go
question, June, before we let you go, which is I'm about to become a dad for the first time myself, and I know you've done a lot of dad's work.
Are you? Oh, congratulations. Wonderful.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're due to have a little girl in November. Me and my partner, not me and Julia, to be clear. Do you have any advice for me? After all your work with dads, what should I be making sure I focus my time and energy on?
Just enjoy her for the first thing, but also don't underestimate the importance of dads. Sometimes, because the beginning, when a child's first born, they're very, the mum is very, very involved, because she may be feeding her and all of that, and so you might feel that you're slightly a loose part. But I don't think you should ever underestimate the importance of dads. Dads and daughters as well is really important. There's a lot of research about the impact that dads have on boys, success, educational success, life success, but it's equally important for girls as well. And the measures are equally sort of strong, that the impact of a dad on a girl's development and sense of self is really quite powerful. So I'd say, enjoy her, enjoy watching her grow, talk to her, sing to her, and just also, like, we have a thing called the pedagogy of the sofa, because the adult's heart rate is lower than a child's heart rate, When a child gets upset, their heart rate gets even faster. So sit down and let her rest on your heart, and her heart will start to calm down, and her distress will reduce because she's literally lying on you, and her heart and your heart will regulate after a while. And that's why I have a sofa in every Leaf nursery, because I want the staff to be able to sit with the children and let their hearts rest and let them, in a way regulate.
Making me a bit emotional, gosh.
So that actually they're beautiful and calm.
Oh my word!
lovely,
Well,
yeah.
lovely. Finishing
We're
off the
welling
podcast
up.
with a good cry. Thank you so much, June.
Oh,
That's been
where can
absolute-
they find her? Where can the
yes,
listeners
before you
find
go,
her?
June, the people listening, if they want to know more about what you're up to, where they can find more about you, where should they go?
They can follow me on LinkedIn. They can follow me, and I will always have blogs posted on there, and our podcast will be on there as well. So yeah, they'll find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the quickest way, really, to be honest.
And
Perfect.
5,000 more things we could have
Yeah,
discussed,
gosh,
June,
look
but
at these cards.
I know.
Well, let's keep a lot of these conversations shorter, and I'll come back again on another subject, any one of my
That's
pet
a deal.
subjects. Sustainability is
deal.
one that I'm very keen
We
on.
didn't even get to sustainability. We didn't get to so many things, but we will get there next time. June, we'd love to
Yeah.
have you back on, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, and thank you to Mikhail as well.
Oh my goodness.
That was good, wasn't it?
God, I was welling up at the end.
Yeah,
Dear
she had us
me.
both cry. That's, I think, my first tiny chair tears.
Do you know what? It might not be my first.
I don't think it's your first
I think,
time.
I think generally I'm quite emotional, but
It was just like,
it's very touching.
obviously it's quite emotional for me right now as I'm starting to prepare for what fatherhood's going to mean. And when she was explaining about that point of like what you can do by having a child, I could just imagine myself on, the sofa with my unborn child, and it made me feel like, that's going to be pretty crazy.
It's magic though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like there really is magic in the connection you have with children, obviously your own, but also for all the educators listening, you'll recognize that she was talking about the love and how you care about the children, and you really do. Like
I
you
loved
don't
that section
forget
about the
them.
love. I thought that was so interesting, her point around what educators can do, like moving away from this slightly, I guess,
clinical,
clinical,
almost
you
idea,
could say. Yeah.
But yeah,
Professional love. For anyone who wants to read more about professional love, is it Aaron Bradbury and Tamsin Grimmer have done a lot of work on professional love?
they
You
have.
should check out their work. It's really, really interesting.
Absolutely. We could probably put a link down
Yeah,
below.
we do.
Let's
links.
do it.
We always do this, don't we? We promise links in the description, and I think Mikkel's sitting there getting more and more stressed about the links he's going to have to find. Oh well. Cheers to the early years.
We don't have any this week.
Please, we want more cheers to the early years. Get in touch. You can email us on tinychairpod@family.co.uk, or you can get in touch on Village or anywhere else on social media. We want to celebrate more. So what are we going to celebrate this week in absence of any cheers to the early years?
Oh, I think the 2-year-olds.
Shout out
Yeah,
2-year-olds
shout out
everywhere.
to all the 2-year-olds. You are doing an amazing job of being 2.
And shout out to all those educators and teachers who are focusing on that age.
Yeah, teachers. Sorry, June. You've told us to say teachers. We should say teachers.
Teachers.
The teachers of the 2-year-olds.
The teachers of the 2-year-olds. Shout out 2-year-olds. Shout out their teachers. Shout out their mums and dads. And I think no more terrible twos.
No more terrible 2s. It's done with.
Banishing it. Right then. I guess that's it. We've
is
already
it.
told where people can get in touch with us. And we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time. Bye.